Good as it gets. Now it's going to be a pleasure to bring up our Secretary of State. That if we could have shared our Secretary of State with Florida and Ohio, we would have had Democrats in the White House. She's someone that I was very pleased to work with both in the Assembly and the Senate, and she is the only person who has ever run for the office of Secretary of State who really wanted to be Secretary of State and wasn't running for Secretary of State in order to end up running for something else as soon as it opened up. A great reformer, both for consumers, for the environment, but also for election reform. I give to you our Secretary of State, Debra Bowen.
Well, you know, I always think, when I'm listening to these speeches, I always think about what's different and what's the same. And there's one thing different about what I'm going to talk about today, and that is I brought this with me. And I know you can't all see in the back, so I'll tell you what it is. It's my toothbrush. And there actually is a reason, besides oral hygiene, that I have this toothbrush with me, and all will be revealed. What's the same? Well, what's the same is what I said when I was running to be Secretary of State, which is that without elections that have integrity, we don't have democracy. You know that. Unless we have a system where every eligible voter is registered, every registered voter has a convenient way to vote, and every vote is counted the way it was cast. Without those things, we don't have democracy. And you're here, you elected me because I promised that those three things would be my priorities as your Secretary of State. Now, they're never done because we keep having more people, and that means we keep having to register more people. And we keep having to work on getting more ways, more convenient ways for people to register to vote. The one thing that I feel comfortable that we have done in California is we have a system in which every vote is counted the way it was cast. That is done. I don't lie awake at night wondering whether or not somebody was able to get into the code of a privately owned software system that runs our elections. We have work to do. I'd love to see us have an open source software system where the public owns the code and every single person in this room and on this planet has the right to look at what's there and to know what it is that's behind the curtain. So we still have that to go. And we will get that done. But we have to teach democracy to the new people who are coming up, to our young people. It's not instinctive. It's not wired in. Watch cats and dogs. Watch what they do that's instinctive. And democracy is not instinctive. It is, however, powerful. And if you get down this year, if you get discouraged, think about what we have seen in other parts of the world in the last year. It is amazing what we have seen other people do around the planet to get what we have and what we often take for granted. But we have to teach democracy. And you know what? Every single one of you is a teacher. And my goal is for all of us to teach democracy so well that registering to vote and voting is as natural as brushing your teeth. You have to learn to do that, too. If we had a colony on the moon and we took toothbrushes, we would have to make sure that everybody knew how to use them. I think our resources are better spent in other ways. But we have to teach democracy, and you are a part of that. Now, the presidential years are really electric. We know who our nominee is already for the presidency, but we're going to have some big changes this year. We have had redistricting, so we have a lot of seats that are very different, a lot of contests that are not the usual, and we have a new top 2 primary system that is going to take some getting used to. So we have some work to do before the primary to make sure that voters understand, and you can be part of educating people about that as well. We now are home to more than 17 million registered voters. How many will vote in this election? If every one of us works on getting people who are registered to actually exercise that right, we'll have a higher percentage than if we all go home and watch debates. Watching debates, at least when there are presidential debates for the other party, might be more fun right now. But it doesn't get us where we need to go. We need to register our future. We need to make registering to vote as important to high school students as getting a driver's license or getting into college, or figuring out a way to pay for it, which is now easier thanks to the DREAM Act in California. Democracy is a right that only works if you exercise it. And we have a very exciting change coming, one I've been waiting a long time for, working on for a long time. We are on the cusp of having voter registration online in the state of California. And what a day that will be. Now, I can't give you a date because we've done the software and the work in the Secretary of State's office, but the signatures that we use to allow people to register to vote online come from the driver's license file and the identification card file. And that means we have to be able to have our software communicate with the DMV software. That's why I'm not giving you a date. The DMV is working really hard on this, and the counties are too, and they have to change their software to be able to do this. But this is a profound change in democracy. Our rolls will be much more accurate. When you register to vote, you won't have to remember to unregister if you are living in a different county, because that will be done automatically. But the most important thing for me is that it will allow us, instead of having to go out with an ironing board in front of, name your favorite retail store, to register everybody who comes along, we're going to be able to focus on the roughly 10% of eligible California voters who do not have a California driver's license or a California ID. Right now, since we have to register everybody and we've got to get everybody's signature on a piece of paper, we don't have the ability to focus that way. I think we will be much more successful in registering everybody if we register everybody we can online. And if people can update their registrations online at 2 o'clock in the morning without a stamp. So it's very exciting, and I'm confident that we can do this with absolute integrity. I'm confident that we can do it in a way that will assure that when you sign an initiative petition and we compare the signature with the signature on file, that we'll know that it's actually the same person who signed the signature. And so for me, it's one of the most exciting things that could happen in the Secretary of State's office. Of course, the next step is to have that registration be automatic when somebody goes to the DMV to get an ID card or a driver's license, and I will be asking you to support that as soon as we get the system up and working. Now, it's not going to go up and work and be there until I am absolutely sure that everybody who uses it will actually be in the database correctly. But once that's done, just imagine what's going to happen. Do you know how many people sit just in Los Angeles County alone and try to decipher people's handwriting on a voter registration card? Thank God nobody ever had to try to read my dad's. There would have been a lot of different people named something like Robert Calvin Bowen, because I'm the only person in the world who can read his handwriting. And we actually have somebody whose whole job in LA County is to try to piece together voter registration cards that were damaged in the mail. You know, that happens every once in a while. You get a third of a card, you're trying to figure out, who is this and how can I contact them to let them know that their card got torn up? Register online, we had an end to that. And an easy way to check. So it's a very exciting time. Now, that's one part of it, but we also have to teach people how to vote. And we do that in part by the high school mock election. And Superintendent Tom Torlakson and I will be doing the high school mock election in California schools again this year. And we want to build on the success from 2008 when we had more than 275,000 students cast mock ballots in that presidential election. Every young person who did that was learning what it is like to exercise their vote in a democracy. And it's really important to teach that. And it turns out it's really important for boys because they hate being embarrassed, teenage boys, and if they think they don't know how to do something, they just won't try. Girls ask questions more than boys. Kind of like asking directions for where you're going, right? So very important. I mean, this is fact. You know, it is fact that, and we have to make sure that we educate people how to use the equipment or how to fill out the vote by mail ballot. So exciting time. Now, there are a lot of things in the world that really irritate me. Really irritates me that we're discussing trickle-down economics again and watching most people get crumbs. I can't believe we're talking about this again. It really irritates me that we still have people who deny that there's climate change occurring. What are they waiting for? Hurricane Katrina times 5? I mean, I was talking to somebody in Oklahoma who works in the oil fields who said, hey, we know, we see it all the time in our weather. It really irritates me that we think we can gauge the quality of a teacher by testing students 20 times a year with a bubble-in multiple choice test. It really irritates me that the banks that screwed up our mortgages were almost got off with no penalties. That really irritated me. But you know, it's not my job to correct all those wrongs. It's my job to make sure that the people who we elect can do that and that we certify the election that gives us the results that you all work for. And when we have somebody like Kamala Harris who is willing to stand alone when it's necessary, all those things that irritate me, I know can be resolved. And California has a real history of electing people who are willing to go it alone and doing it ourselves. If Kamala Harris hadn't held out, the whole country would have been worse off. So I want to thank you all for continuing to elect people who are willing to stand up and follow their moral compass. I did it when I took on the voting systems and said we are not going to use touchscreen voting equipment in the state of California because we can't be sure that the results will reflect what voters did. We have a lot at stake. Every one of you is a teacher. It's a little harder than teaching somebody to brush their teeth, but it's just as possible. And every place you go, every time you talk about an issue, every time you talk about elections, you're part of the mechanism that passes on democracy from one generation to the next and to the next and to the next. And if we do it right, it will be kind of like a multi-level marketing scheme. You know, one person touches 2, those 2 touch 5 more, and all of a sudden, everybody is registered, and everybody who's registered is voting, and I am the happiest Secretary of State in the world. So I want your help. We're going to be We've got some real challenges, but you need to help me get in place the representation that we need so that I don't have to be irritated about all of those things. I can concentrate on being irritated when people are arguing to have photo ID laws that are intended to disenfranchise people who don't have a driver's license or a California ID card. I'll keep being irritated about those things. You all take on the rest of it, and together we will all have a great democracy in California, and we'll teach the rest of the country how to do it. Thank you. And don't forget to brush your teeth.